And we have to come back to, the favorite topic of 2020 and now 2021, which is the pandemic. And, Australia's found itself in a rather interesting position again, with now Victoria now in lockdown. So that's, along with New South Wales, the two biggest states in the country are now effectively in lockdown, affecting, just under half the population, and it's getting full on because the Delta strain's doing its thing, making its way around. Yeah. Obviously, there's been lots of discussion again about approaches. What do we do? How are things going to look in 6 months' time, 12 months' time? What's the trajectory out of this? All that sort of thing. And then obviously there's this question of am I protected if I'm fully vaccinated? Why do I have to keep adhering to restrictions if I am vaccinated? How many people does it take? What percentage of the population does it take to be fully vaccinated before things like lockdowns don't happen again? Just sticking with why you still need to live to the restrictions even though you're vaccinated. I mean, I'm fully vaccinated now, but I can understand that the best part of the vaccine is really more about the fact that it prevents serious disease as its primary objective, I guess. And I think I don't know if that's been properly communicated out, that people might expect that they get their jab and then it's fine, they can do whatever they want, but they can still potentially transmit the virus to unvaccinated people, which is kind of the underlying issue.
Look, that's a really good point. And unfortunately, I don't think enough of the good points around vaccination have actually really been communicated. One of them is that, sure, we won't open up, until we maybe get 80% the population vaccinated, but at least dangle a carrot for those that are out there vaccinated. At least tell them that maybe in 3 to 6 months they will get freedoms. And exactly as you've said, the problem is that even when you're vaccinated, you can still communicate the disease, and that's just comes down to individual immune responses. So even though you're protected from serious illness, you can still spread it, at least, for a shorter period, and you're also more likely to be asymptomatic. So it does complicate things, and that's why the only reason that we can have confidence is when we get to levels like 80% of vaccination. And, I think everyone should be encouraged. And in Australia as well, it should just be on a first come, first serve, because that's how you get the numbers up.
Well, that's interesting in that discussion around, I guess, herd immunity, for lack of a better word, because that's what people are focused on in terms of what the number is, etc. And it's instructive, I guess, to see what's happening in some other countries like the US. I'm thinking of the US in particular, where you see scenes now of as long as you're vaccinated, now you can go out and do a lot of the old school regular activities that you used to. So, where I guess, you're not allowed, you're not permitted to go into, say, a stadium, for instance, unless you've been vaccinated. Or, but we referred to the Late Show before with with Branson, so he's got like a stipulation that all of the audience, they can come, but the only way they can get in is if they can show that they've been vaccinated, because they're going to be in that the theatre, for the time when they're recording. And I find that quite interesting, because you're starting to see that already happen in other countries. And then, of course, there's the infamous Boris example over in the UK, where he's called Freedom Day and said, from this day we're just gonna open up, and I guess what they're at. I can't remember the exact numbers. I don't know if it's 60% or something like that, but and that's much lower than the 80% figure that some of the leaders here have been talking about. And
they've got 60% full vaccination, and they've had about 8% infection. So they must be, they're up around the 70%. So they should achieve their 80% reasonably soon.
And that kind of brings into question the whole thing of when is the right time to open up. And I guess that's where the discussion comes from. What does that mean when we go forward? Because, as we were talking about before we got on, like at some point we open up and then that's going to open the floodgates for travel and moving things around. We haven't had flu for the past 2 years, but part of the reason we used to get so many flu cases is because they would come in to the country and circulate. Right. So COVID wouldn't be any different in that respect.
No, and I think it's important to acknowledge as well that everywhere else in the world, they've handled COVID very differently, as in there hasn't been any real restriction on travel or moving around. Even though they've had lockdowns, they've been more sort of personal responsibility focused, even though they've had complete lockdowns. But, it's more about keeping yourself safe. And look, that's simply because the numbers have been so huge right from the start that there's very little you can do effectively. I guess they're at the point now, certainly the people I talk to overseas, where they're just tired. They're tired of living under COVID. And so now I guess they're getting close to the numbers they need. Let's hope that it works for them, because it's been really disruptive everywhere else in the world. We've been very lucky here in Australia.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, we might wrap it up, and just a note. So I guess podcasting is still a good activity to do while you're in lockdown. I guess I can't go outside at the moment. This is actually the 5th lockdown that Victoria's gone through. We've already discussed it on the show in previous episodes. There's a sense, I guess, here that we all know what to do now because we're such veterans at at this now. A little bit of a different story in New South Wales, because I think this is really their first serious lockdown post the initial one that happened, and I think it kind of took them all by surprise and is a bit of a shock to the system. And hopefully that kind of represents a shock to the system nationwide, that it's still here, it still has to be dealt with, and we need to get on with getting vaccinated and moving things along. Otherwise, Australia could potentially be left behind if we don't deal with it.
That's it. The only way out of this is vaccination. So, make it easy. And if you're not vaccinated, go and get a shot.